Perfect.
How is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of Beared Down Uncut, the show where we talk everything Bears every day of the week, completely uncut. Today, in episode number 171 of Uncut, we are back discussing the Bears offense heading into the 2022 season. We're going to kick off our offseason coverage here and talk about Calvin Ridley being named a prime target for the Chicago Bears to pick up this offseason. Should the Bears bring him in and pair him with Darnell Mooney? How would he look with Justin Fields? We're going to be breaking it all down for you guys today. Welcome back to the show, though. It has been a minute. There has been so much going on in Chicagoland ever since we last spoke. But I would like to say before I introduce myself and my co-host, we are back full-time permanently. I know I've said that a lot in the past, but we have tons of off-season content planned for you guys. Obviously, this first video isn't even about our new GM and head coach. We're going to be breaking down stuff like that in the next couple of weeks, as well as discussing the offensive and defensive coordinator hires, bringing NFL draft coverage back in, 2022 player projections, free agency, the draft. Absolutely everything is back. We are excited to be back and in the loop of things. So if you guys want the most comprehensive Bears coverage on the web, we plan on posting a video and a podcast each and every day. So wherever you may be listening, do us a favor, drop a like, subscribe, follow, and we're going to bring you guys the best Bears coverage on the web all off season. Welcome back, though. It feels good to be back in this position. I am your host, Chris Malpe, today to talk about a wide receiver one target with Allen Robinson's free agency looming. I am joined with my co-host, Jaylen McClinton. Jaylen, feels good to be back. How have you been? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It feels, it always feels good to get back to talking about, Bears football or football in general. Obviously, the Super Bowl is next week. Definitely gonna be a good game in my opinion. I'm going for Joey B. But it's always good to be back. Definitely wish we could have recorded sooner than later, but it is what it is.
Unfortunately, lives get a little bit busy, but we're now in a spot where we can settle down and start doing stuff consistently. Had to throw on for the first podcast back my Jeff Dickerson shirt. Never got to say anything about it, but my condolences to him and thoughts and prayers from everyone at Beared Down are being sent to his family. I think we've created something here pretty special throughout the last almost 4 years. He's definitely someone who we looked up to and inspired us throughout time. So he lost a tough battle with colon cancer recently. We're wishing the best for Parker and everyone over there with the Dickersons. So let's hop into this. Feels a little rusty for sure, but feels good to be back. So Calvin Ridley, this is a name that has popped up on the radar recently for the Chicago Bears. As we know, there were several problems that came with the Bears offense in 2021. Matt Nagy and his staff were one such problem. Now they're out of town. The only member of the Bears wide receiving core that managed the top 600 yards last season or this season, whatever you want to call it, was Darnell Mooney. And everyone else came in well below that mark, including Allen Robinson, who seems like he's on his way out of Chicago. So the reason we're starting with this is because it's a little bit more of a centralized video, and it was definitely an interesting talking point that came up online a couple of days ago when ESPN insider Jeremy Fowler mentioned former Atlanta Falcons first-round pick Calvin Ridley as a name to watch for the Bears. Fowler said, after stepping away from football for 12 games to work on his mental health, Ridley's future remains uncertain. He is knocking on the door of a top 10 receiver status when he's healthy and on the field, and his $11.6 million option in 2022 could easily be flipped into a long-term deal. The Atlanta Falcons need the draft capital and the cap savings, so a few sleepers to watch here are Buffalo, New England, and Chicago. So, Jaylen, it seems like Allen Robinson, and it has been reported that Allen Robinson is out of his way or is out the door in Chicago this offseason. Calvin Ridley, definitely an interesting receiver that we've seen throughout time. Back in 2020, he had 90 receptions for 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns with 15.3 yards per catch. Only played in 5 games last year, tallying 31 receptions for almost 300 yards and 2 scores. But I want to ask you, do you think the Bears should look to try and make this trade and bring in someone who could solidify as their who could be solidified as their wide receiver one.
Now, if you're a true OG fan here, when we first started, like one of our first years in 2018, in the draft, I wanted Calvin Ridley like so bad at number 8. But like as the draft process started going on, and obviously once we got three wide receivers in free agency with Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, and I would guess he was called Trey Burton the receiver because he wasn't really a tight end, but I knew that was going to happen at number 8. We ended up taking Roquan. Definitely not mad at that, but I was definitely a huge fan of of Calvin Ridley coming out of Alabama. He's very good friends with Eddie Jackson. Obviously, we drafted his brother Riley, who didn't pan out, but I think that would be an amazing option for Justin Fields. As a number one wide receiver, definitely he's a great route runner. He's 27 years old, so around the season comes out, this is going to be his 28 year old season, but he's still an amazing wide receiver. Obviously, like you said, he stepped away because he was dealing with mental health and but now he's better, and I feel like he's gonna come back and be that top 10 receiver that he was last season, and in the years before that. So I definitely feel like if it's possible, and if Atlanta's willing to listen to polls, I definitely feel like we should try to make a trade for him.
Yeah, newly hired Bears general manager Ryan Poles did say a couple days ago in an interview that the number one point that he needs to address first in Chicago is the offensive line. Following that, you'd have to assume that either cornerback or wide receiver is closely in second. So, taking a look at Ridley, he's been nothing but great, especially these last couple of years in the league when Julio Jones' health lingered when he was with the Falcons. So almost 1,000 yards in both 2019 and 2018. 2020 was really his breakout year. He was set to have another good year in 2021 before those mental health issues came into play. So I think the Bears could get Ridley for a modest price, and it's really a 180 for Chicago, a team that the fan base so loved Riley Ridley a couple of years ago. Now possibly stepping away and taking a look at Calvin Ridley in a new regime, but obviously Allen Robinson is going to be out the door soon, and Jaylen, as you mentioned, Calvin Ridley, such an incredible route runner, also brings in the long ball effect for sure. So he's someone I definitely like the Bears to take a look at if the money adds up. I believe the Bears are going to be in the top half of the league in terms of cap space this year, with the ability to add a lot more if they cut certain players. So it should be interesting to see how the Bears approach free agency and the draft as we move forward towards March here in the new league year. But Calvin Ridley is definitely someone I think Chicago would be dumb not to take a look at. Before we move on to a little bit of his off the field issue, or not essentially issues, but his lapses in football, let me rephrase that. Let's talk a little bit about whether or not Ridley really is a wide receiver one in this league. Jaylen, you talked about how much you liked him coming out of the draft, and he's been pretty good. He was brought into this league to be that number one wide receiver. We saw him break out in 2020 before Julio Jones left the Falcons. But in years prior, he had pretty solid years. 63, 64 receptions, 866 yards, 821 yards, 821 yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns in 2019 and 18 before that big breakout year he had in 2020. So, Jaylen, as you know, and as I know, and as any Bears fans know, the Bears do need to get this right. They need to get a wide receiver one for Justin Fields, bring in someone who can help him level up this offense along with newly hired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. So do you think Riley Ridley could come into Chicago and solidify himself as a true wide receiver one in this league?
I definitely feel like he could. Obviously, he didn't have the opportunity until really this year. Even though Julio's been dealing with injuries for the last couple of seasons, to really be Atlanta's number one option, and I definitely feel like he has the talent to. He's proved he can. 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns last year. That's number one wide receiver. Production, and he was mainly the number 2 behind Julio when Julio was healthy. So I definitely feel like he can be a number one. I don't think it's that's far fetched or a high take. Like I said, he's proved it before, and coming here, he's just going to get more targets and more opportunity as just a number one option.
Yeah, I got to go ahead and agree with you. We didn't really see Calvin. Jeez, I keep going back to Riley now that I said his name once. But we didn't really see Calvin Ridley get the opportunity to get that high of volume until this year as the wide receiver one in Atlanta. So he had a lot of targets in a lot of these games, which is definitely worth noting. I believe his best game Came on October 3rd versus the now Washington Commanders, where he had 7 catches for 80 yards. He also had a game against the Buccaneers, 7 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. I really like the velocity of his game, how he can be someone who's great in short and intermediate routes, but also has the speed to break one long and possibly get hit on the deep ball, something that Justin Fields loves. So I think Calvin Ridley could come in, definitely be a wide receiver 1 in Chicago, and complement Darnell Mooney's play really well. That's something that really does intrigue me. Now, it seems like looking online, one of the only Bears fans' gripes so far with this, if a trade were to possibly go down, is obviously what happened this last offseason. Ridley announced in the middle of the season that he was going to step away from football to work on his own mental health. He ended up missing the rest of the season, which totaled to 12 games after playing the first 5 weeks. Jaylen, it seems like if he was trying to get traded or trying to get some sort of a contract extension, that his health would be in the right place and he was back and committed and ready to play football. But does his lapse from football and his time away this past season concern you whatsoever?
No, not really, because he's human. Everybody goes through, let me not say everybody, but a lot of people have mental health issues, and it's better that he did it now than later. He's like I said, he's still human at the end of the day. His mental health comes first before anything, and I'm glad he was just able to, to get that over with and get past that and get ready to focus back on football. But that wouldn't necessarily worry me because this is the first time it happened. It's not like he's taking multiple, games off for mental health in the last couple seasons. This is a one-time thing, like I said, this doesn't really concern me, one bit.
I got to go ahead and agree with you on the head. I mean, there have been times where we've been recording this podcast and have gotten so fed up in recording that we've had to take breaks to just focus on ourselves for a while and get our heads in the right spot. So, these mental health issues happen to everyone. I truly do believe that Calvin Ridley loves the sport of football and is going to continue to play at a high level regardless of where he plays. And I don't think that's something that should concern Bears fans, because if Ridley is trying to get out of Atlanta or trying to vie for a contract extension moving forward, I truly do believe that his heart is 100% in the game and he is ready to go. So it should be interesting to see what happens in these next couple of weeks and months as the Bears look for their next wide receiver 1. They've got the 39th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. There are a couple of really good options on the free agent market, including Devontae Adams, and then some interesting trade targets as well, including guys amongst the likes of Calvin Ridley. So it should be interesting to see how this pans out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to our first episode back, Uncut episode 171. We are back doing this each and every day. We're going to continue to cover the Bears offseason as best as we can. And I promise as we get into these coming days, we're going to be breaking down the hirings of Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, Luke Getsy, as well as Alan Williams, and much more. So be sure to drop a like, subscribe, or follow wherever you are listening, and continue to stay tuned, because we're going to bring you the most comprehensive Bears coverage each and every day. If you want more content from us, we're getting our website back up and going once again. It's been a long time since we've gotten stuff going on there, but we want to continue to consistently post on that platform as well. So you can find our website link down in the description, bearddown.com, and check out more content from us. You can also find the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Beared Down. And finally, you can find the links to all of our social media pages down in the description for myself as well as my co-host Jaylen. It's a great way to see our thoughts on all things Bears, as well as the rest of the National Football League and the entirety of Chicago sports. And not only that, but it's just another great way to interact with us. So the links to our personal social media pages are down in the description. Jaylen McClinton, feels great to be back and in the saddle again. I'm really excited for what we're going to be able to put together this offseason. A lot of optimism in Chicago right now following the departures of Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. Whole new regime coming in, building around Justin Fields. Should be exciting to see what we can accomplish this offseason, from today up until OTAs, to the end of training camp, to the preseason, and back into the regular season. But any last words before we sign off here?
I'm excited for this new journey. This is the first time this happened for us since we've been doing this podcast. Obviously, we made the podcast right when we hired Nagy. So, going through that whole process of having a new GM and now a new head coach who's going to bring in a new system. And we're going to see how Ryan Poles drafts instead of Ryan Pace. So just a whole new whole new coach, whole new environment, and definitely excited. It's always new when you have a new, it's not bad to have new beginnings, and that's about it. Bear down. That's about it.
Yeah, I gotta agree with what you said. I think most definitely a breath of fresh air in
Yeah,
Chicago that was much needed. And it seems like this entire process of even just in the short term, building the coaching staff, setting a message early on, it's been really prevalent. And it seems like most everyone has picked up on it, that these guys are not messing around, that they want to bring a contender back to Chicago. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it pans out in the next couple of weeks. If you guys don't know, I go to school right by Indianapolis. So all the Colts fans here have been telling me good things about Eberflus and such. So looking forward to seeing how this pans out moving forward. And we're going to cover it for you guys each and every day with new content coming out. Guys, it's been a pleasure to be your host. Feels so good to be back. Once again, my name is Chris Malpe. Thank you so much for joining us. And Bears fans, as always, do us a favor and stay safe and bear down. We'll see you in the next one coming out tomorrow, probably talking about Poles or Eberflus at that point. And that's pretty much it for us. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.